last year, and one of the area high schools has a really cool tradition where they ask their former teachers to come back and give their diploma, and I was the only middle school teacher there for this particular student, and so I got to hand her a diploma, and that was probably the most memorable experience.
The district has actually provided me a lot of tools and resources. I have the latest technology currently in my classroom with the Clever Touch board. I also have the ability to get my master's degree through Columbus City Schools and take additional classes for my coursework for absolutely free and incorporate it into my teacher schedule.
I chose to work in the district because I grew up in the inner city school, and I met a school nurse that was a nurse of color, and I wanted to be in a school district that had more students that were minority so they could see that they could succeed in whatever field they chose to be in.
They have continuous trainings and workshops that we can do at our pace online through Public School Works. They also have a no-cost out-of-pocket college tuition that we can go to school to obtain our degree.
Everybody is cheering for everybody. Everybody is rooting for everybody. Everybody has one goal, and that's to educate our students. Everything focuses around our students, and that's the biggest thing. That's why I'm in Columbus. That's why I wouldn't leave Columbus. There's a lot of room for growth. You're going to continue to learn. You're going to meet so many people. You're going to connect with people. If you desire to be an administrator, you can go that route. If you desire to be in a TOSA position, a teacher on special assignment, you can go that route. You're going to grow.
You get a lot of different diverse pockets in Columbus, and I think it says a lot with the district as well. Whatever community you find yourself teaching in, you are impacting a certain community. I find myself in the east side impacting a certain, and I know friends in the north and the west side that are doing different work with different populations of students that it's really rewarding.
If you love working with students and family from all walks of life, then come join our team. The opportunity to be a part of a great team is here. I cannot say enough about friendships that I have made with so many amazing people. My family has grown and I love it. I can't wait to meet you, and welcome to our team.
My name is Sandra Santos, and I am the proud principal of World Language Middle School for Columbus City Schools.
My choice was deliberate. I'm a product of Columbus City Schools, so I understood from early on that Columbus City Schools is a caring community of educators. As an instructional leader, I have an opportunity to form a student's future. And so through forming it, I've worked with social workers, teachers, parents. And so as the instructional leader, I can implement various instruction, intervention that will help to support students.
So one of the specific resources that I thought was super powerful for me to be a first-year principal was a principal coach. The principal coach role really helped me in the supports of budgeting, knowing how to manage my time, knowing how to support my community, knowing how to build that culture and climate, and knowing how to get my students ready, because even in middle school, as a building principal, my kids have to be ready for the next level, which is high school.
So I always try to let my kids know that they are one of my kids, and I'm going to treat them as if they were my own. And so I think.
Hello to our entire Columbus City Schools community. My name is Brajan Oates, and I'm a student at Columbus Downtown High School. Before we begin tonight's Board of Education business meeting, I invite you to check out these highlights and updates from across the district.
Greetings and welcome to this week's highlights from across the district. We are right in the middle of National Hispanic Heritage Month, which runs from September 15th through October 15th. This national celebration of Hispanic cultures, history, and contributions started in 1968 as Hispanic Heritage Week and was later expanded to cover a full 30-day period in 1988. This month-long celebration kicked off this weekend with the second annual Latino Heritage Month Parade and Festival to celebrate the diverse and dynamic contributions of the Hispanic community to our city and beyond. Also, this weekend, our community turned out to celebrate and support the 2023 United Negro College Fund 40th Anniversary Columbus Walk for Education. The event helped the UNCF raise funds to support our students and work with HBCUs to maintain a pipeline of graduates who are leaders of tomorrow. Thank you to the UNCF, city, and business leaders and everyone who came out this weekend to support our students. Last week, we celebrated our first two cohorts of Columbus Promise students. City community partners and Columbus State Community College leaders, and I Know I Can, welcomed and encouraged our new and returning scholars as they start a new chapter in their academic journeys, whether they are just starting at Columbus State or starting a brand new year. This is the third year for Columbus Promise Scholars, and we are so grateful for our partners at the City, Columbus State Community College, I Know I Can, and many business partners who are making college a reality for so many of our CCS students. Congratulations to two Columbus Alternative High School seniors, Joshua Conroy and Neil Gordon, for being selected as semifinalists in the National Merit Scholarship Competition. This program honors students with exceptional academic ability and potential for success. Joshua and Neil will continue in the competition for more than 7,000 National Merit Scholarships worth nearly $28 million that will be offered in the spring. World Language Middle School recently received a huge honor. Last week, the attaché from the French consulate presented the school with the La Belle France Education Award in a special ceremony. This distinction is a seal granted by the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs based on the advice of an interministerial advisory committee and is granted to schools promoting the French language and culture as part of their curriculum. World Language Middle School is one of 65 schools in the United States that have received this honor. A big congratulations to the school for this prestigious distinction. Another kudos goes out to Alpine Elementary, which received national recognition recently for its growth standards in math and reading for the previous school year. iReady Curriculum Associates awarded 158 schools for exceeding student growth standards in reading or math, and Alpine was one of 13 schools that surpassed those growth standards in both subjects. Great work to the staff and students at Alpine Elementary. Last week, South Junior ROTC cadets participated in the Ohio State ROTC Remembrance Climb, honoring the bravery of the firefighters lost on 9/11 with each stair they climbed. Congratulations to South High School junior Nick Sturts, who was offered a conditional full-ride scholarship to any ROTC college program. Earlier this month, we welcomed our youngest CCS scholars for their first day of pre-K. The celebration and fun continued into that weekend with our Welcome to Pre-K event at the Columbus Museum of Art. There were 170 families who attended the event and enjoyed hands-on pre-K readiness activities for the whole family, a live band, free readiness kits, and so much more. Thank you to our partners at the Columbus Museum of Art, WOSU, and the Jazz Arts Group for providing a fun event full of resources to our pre-K students and their families. We are already near the end of September, and there are a few events coming up, so make sure you mark your calendars. Next week is Deaf Awareness Week, which is a national week to celebrate and raise awareness. This annual observation takes place during the last full week of September and focuses on raising awareness and celebrating the deaf and hard of hearing people, communities, and organizations. Coming up next month is National Principal Month, which is a great opportunity to recognize and celebrate the many wonderful principals we have right here in Columbus City Schools. Thank you to all of our amazing principals for their leadership and dedication. Also, make sure you check out the Family and Community Engagement Series, or FACES. This online series highlights many topics to help inform and connect our families, communities, and schools. Last week's topic of discussion explored mental health in children, teens, and young adults, and featured expert roundtable guests. You can check out this episode and more through the Columbus City Schools Facebook and YouTube channels. These have been highlights from around the district for the week of September 19th. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, everyone. I'm calling our September 19th regular board business meeting to order. Please call the roll.
President Adair.
Present.
Ms. Beckerly.
Present.
Mr. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Cole. Dr. Pierce.
Present.
Ms. Reyes.
Here.
Vice President Vera.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any students here this evening? Will you please come to the front and lead us in the pledge? Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, students. Board members, on our agenda this evening, we have 5 speakers signed up for public comment. We have a report from our superintendent. No reports expected from internal auditor treasurer. We have 1 item on board matters. We have a notice of public hearing on reemployment. We have our consent agenda. We have no public comment at the end of the meeting, and we have an executive session.
Motion to approve.
There's been a motion
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Are any changes? Seeing none, and without objection, the agenda is approved. We're going to go ahead and jump into our public comments. Our first speaker is John Navarez. Topic, I want the board to reconsider the teacher placement. Hello, sir. You have 3 minutes to address the board. You may begin whenever you're ready.
Good evening, board members. I was here, I think, last month, and I expressed my concern on the situation, and I got a letter from y'all actually today or yesterday saying that basically I'm just gonna say it like this. I don't think y'all understand that all I'm asking is for some discretion in where y'all place these teachers. I don't have a problem with the teachers. I just think that that's a lot on a first grader. My 3-year-old will be going to school soon, and I'll be having to address this situation again. So I'll be here up until the hell she's going to first grade too. I don't think it's fair that as a child that y'all these aren't coaches. These are ways of life, and y'all enforcing them on our children without any discretion of how it's affecting the family or the parent. And I know that today's day and age, things have changed. But even in today's day and age, you don't spoon feed a child steak. This part about a transition in front of my children's eyes is what the part I got. I don't care about what's going on. I mean, I don't think the transition should be a part of my child in the first grade learning that or seeing that. And I still ask that y'all take discretion on it because I'm pretty sure I'm not the only parent that feels like that. It hurts me because we trust y'all with our children. And all the board had to tell me was, this is basically, what was the word y'all used? Because I want to be sure I quote it just right. It says, in leading the way, our students will value and engage diverse cultures. This is more of a way of life than a culture that y'all are putting under cultures. And a unique perspective through mutual respect and open dialogue. How do you have a conversation with a 6-year-old about somebody turning from one sex to another in front of them? And I don't think it's fair to the parents or to the children, the confusion it may cause. I just think first grade is not the place for a teacher to be teaching with children who may have a lot of questions. And their minds are so innocent. I still ask that y'all take discretion in this and reconsider it. And I'll be here the next meeting and every meeting until something makes sense. Because y'all response don't make sense. Politically, it's right, but morally, it's wrong. That's all I got to say.
Is Kia Woodward. Topic, I want the board to be more enthusiastic about the levy. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the board. You may begin whenever you're ready.
Good evening, board members. I'm a product of Columbus City Schools, and that education afforded me to go to Howard University, and then also afforded me to come and get my graduate degree at The Ohio State University. I now have a daughter currently in Columbus City Schools. I'm an educator, a parent, and a school social work counselor. I'm also a part of All In for Ohio Kids Columbus in collaboration with the Columbus Justice Coalition. And we have a shared vision for the future of Columbus City Schools, and we want to see our schools transformed into equitable, safe, healthy, and welcoming 21st century learning centers and environments. And it's crucial. We have a lot of high tech coming into this area, and I believe without the enthusiastic support from board members like yourself, I don't believe this levy is going to pass. And it needs to pass. My daughter is in the same building for high school that I was in. Some of the buildings are built in 1923, and we have students who are going to be graduating in 2023. The community needs to support this initiative for Columbus to be a leader in this community and also on the map of Ohio. But what I see is, I see enthusiastic teachers, I see parents who are advocating for this. I don't see board members really fighting for this levy. And I would just like to see more enthusiastic support for that, because it's our kids, it's my kids, it's the future of Columbus City Schools, one of the largest districts in the state of Ohio. And so goes Ohio, so goes the nation. I also am a firm believer there's a war on public education in this country. I hope that when my daughter is my age, there'll still be public education. But the rate this country is going, I don't have that much hope. So this is why I am out here advocating for you all to just get more lit fire. Because again, these are our kids. This is our future. With global warming, the Midwest is going to be a bellwether for a lot of tech, a lot of high industries coming in because, again, the East Coast, West Coast, the environment is just getting too volatile. And so the Midwest is becoming more of a moderate place. And a lot of companies want to come here, but we have to produce kids that can work in those companies. And I think by innovating our buildings, increasing our tech programs, that takes money. It takes community investment. And the community wants to believe in Columbus City Schools. I would just like to see more of everyone on this board out there advocating for our kids in this levy. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. The next speaker is Miranda Jones, topic transgender teachers. I would like the board to provide a roadmap for alternatives if I don't want my child to have a transgender teacher. Ms. Jones? Okay, our next speaker will be Hanif Abdurraqib. Oh, is Ms. Jones here? Oh. Topic, wants the board to approve the levy. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the board.
Hi, good evening. Thank y'all for giving me a few minutes tonight. My name's Hanif Abdurraqib, and I'm a community member who grew up on the east side of Columbus and went to Columbus City Schools from K through 12. I grew up in a neighborhood where a playground was attached to one of the schools, and that playground was a site of pleasure and joy for that neighborhood. It was a place where the imaginations of young folks could be ungoverned and grow, much like the school itself. And when the school began to get neglected, so did the playground. And what that did was the neighborhood folded in on itself in a way. People began to stay inside. People began to feel like, because this area was neglected, we are a neglected people. I have gone back to and continue to go back to Columbus City Schools now years after, almost 2 decades after graduating. I go back to the school I graduated from and schools that I spent time in, like this one. And it has been joyful and pleasurable to see the teachers being innovative and inventive with how they engage the students, but the actual architecture of these places does not meet the standard that the teachers and students are operating within. And I would like us to consider the reality that the architecture of a place speaks to what potential is being dreamed of the people within that place. And if a place's architecture is limited, then that is saying to people that there are limits placed on what we believe your imagination is capable of. And so I am someone who is very eager to see our schools updated and the tech updated and have adequate resources not only for teachers, but for students, because our schools also need to be places that people want to go and want to be in. They can't only be vessels for someone to come and exit. They have to be places where imaginations can flourish. They have to be places where people can be challenged. And they have to be places where the people at the head of the classrooms and in administrative positions as well have the resources and abilities to challenge the people within them. One last thing I would like to really urge us to consider is that a city is not just one place. A city is a series of interconnected places, and no city is great if every part of it is not cared for with thoughtfulness and with urgency and with real care. And so I would love to see the amount of urgency and energy being placed into our Short North area or these kind of areas, the same urgency placed into our schools, because a city cannot operate if all moving parts of it, if all the cities within the city are not tended to well. And I would love for our young folks to have a place that says to them, we want you to be our best, your best, the best person you can possibly be, not in spite of this place's limitations, but because of a quest for abundance and what can be given to you. And that is what I have. Thank you so much for giving me a few minutes, and I appreciate y'all.
Thank you so much for your comment. Our last speaker this evening is Crystal Davies. Topic, consider the important role of family ambassadors. Good evening. You have 3 minutes, I'm sorry, to address the board.
For time, appreciate it.
3 minutes, sorry.
Good evening, President Adair, board members. Appreciate this opportunity to speak tonight. It's my pleasure to stand before you in my support of the levy and its potential effect on the Family Ambassador program. I'm in my second year as a Family Ambassador, and I am learning and growing with this program, and it has been my privilege to serve in this role. I put in my application on a whim. I have 2 children with autism and know my way around testing IEPs, ETRs, 504s, and I'm used to volunteering in schools with booster groups and leadership roles and serving in my church, so I thought, why not? My days are free. I thought I was going to take all of that knowledge to help parents, and I have, but I got the bonus plan. I am doing so much more, and it is far more in depth than just, quote, helping parents. It is teaching parents to be engaged in their children's education and advocating for their children. Families are the backbones of society, and we are in supporting roles. When we strengthen homes and families, we strengthen communities, cities, and so on. This is done one step at a time, one day at a time, one family at a time. I help provide the tools for families' personal toolboxes. I can be a support pillar along with others in their lives. Even when one family is engaged, future generations can be changed far beyond what we can see. I would like to share an example of some work I've done as a family ambassador and impact on families that I've served. Understanding the need for early literacy interventions, I started a Reading Buddies program in my school. I reached out to a parent volunteer who I thought would be perfect for the role. Met with the teachers, she loved her work. We expanded this year, and now 5 days a week, there is a parent volunteer engaged in her child's learning and taken interest in the success of other children. Her comment to me at the end of last year as I continued to engage her in volunteer opportunities was, "Thank you, this gives me purpose." I testify that this program works and is an integral part of the success of families in Columbus City Schools. I am not an employee, I am a vendor, and I am here because I care. I understand as an engaged family member myself what a difference engagement brought to my children's lives, and I want to share that love and pass along my knowledge to CCS families. There is so much more I could be doing, but I am limited. I am absolutely a bridge between home and school, and I want to continue the bridge of success for CCS families. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, and thank you for serving our families. Thank you. That ends our public comment. We will now move into item 4, which is our superintendent report. Good evening, Dr. Chapman.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, President Adair, board members, and members of the community. It is great to be here this evening at Centennial High School for this evening's board meeting. Tonight, we have prepared several presentations to share with the board and the community. First, we will hear from Dr. Keith Harris, Area Superintendent for Region 4, who will give us an overview of the region along with some recognitions, data, and highlights. Followed by Dr. Harris, we'll hear from Principal Stephanie Porta, the proud principal of Centennial High School. Principal Porta will then introduce the student ambassadors who are here with us tonight to share more information about their school. After the student presentations, we will then transition to an update on 2 key important conversations that we are prepared to have with our community tonight. The first presentation will be on the state report card, and the second presentation will be on the statement of facts and talking points. So now at this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Harris.
Good evening, Board President Adair, Vice President Vera, members of the board, Treasurer Van Over, and Superintendent Chapman. It gives me great pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with you about Region 4 this evening. I would like to start with a demographic overview of the region. Region 4 is one of the 6 regions across the district. The region is composed of 19 schools and 1 program. Region 4 3 feeder patterns include all the elementary and middle schools that matriculate into Centennial Whetstone, and Columbus International High Schools. Our region includes Indianola K-8, the district's only school focusing on informal education programming, as well as Columbus Global Academy, which is our newcomer for English as secondary language students. The region has 2,252 EL students, which is 25.6% of the region's population. There are 1,278 gifted students identified as gifted ID, which represents 14.5% of the region and 38% of the district's population with this identification. The region has 1,359 students with disabilities, which represents 15.5% of the region. This graphic here is just a visual image of the three feeder patterns: Columbus International High School, Centennial High School, Whetstone, as well as the two specialized programs, Indianola K-8 and Columbus Global Academy. The vision for Region 4 is that 100% of our schools will earn a 4 or a 5 on the state report card for their overall school rating or work in progress. Our mission is that we exist to ensure every student in Region 4 obtains the attributes of a CCS portrait of a graduate. The core values for Region 4 were developed by our principals. These core values are the foundation for decision-making in the day-to-day work in Region 4. They include: students come first and guide our work; critical conversations around race, racism, and equity; engage, apply, grow; and data: own, embrace, and use it. The remainder of my presentation tonight will be anchored in the board's goals and guardrails, beginning with strengthening reading proficiency goal. As you know, the district has made a substantial investment with the adoption of 3 key curriculum resources: Hegarty, Foundations, and Into Reading by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, or HMH. Beginning the 22-23 school year, vendor coaching on the use of these 3 resources was provided for all elementary teachers in grades K through 5 in Region 4. The vendor coaching consists of job-embedded professional development, during which HMH coaches visit our schools and provide one-on-one support using the Into Reading resources. This support includes classroom visits, individualized feedback to teachers, modeling of resources, support with planning, and other supports as requested. Each reading teachers in grades K through 5 receive 6 visits from the HMH coaches, or received 6 visits from the coaches last school year. These visits also included a debrief with the building leader and/or the instructional coach to discuss the observations during their visit. Principals reported seeing an increase in the frequency of use of the Into Reading resources with Fidelity as a result of this vendor coaching. These vendor coaching visits will continue this school year. In addition to ensuring students have access to grade level standards and instruction through the use of our adopted curriculum resources, Region 4 has focused on monitoring the use of iReady personalized pathways by students. Each student has a personalized pathway based upon their diagnostic score, made up of differentiated lessons that provide instruction in the areas where students need the most support. Use of the iReady pathways is differentiated based on whether students are below, at, or above grade level. Students use the iReady pathways, or the use of the student iReady pathways is monitored by principals, teachers, and our Region 4 core team. We believe that this is a viable improvement strategy for increasing literacy among our students in Region 4. The Department of Strategic Performance has looked at the effect of using iReady individualized pathways in 2 ways in reading and math. First, by beginning of the year to middle of the year growth by students, and second, by middle of the year to OST impact on growth or OST outcome. The team revealed that students who meet the minimum fidelity requirements for iReady, 30 minutes and 70% pass rates, significantly outperform students who did not use the pathways. The data for Region 4 shows strong passage rate in their iReady personalized pathways and reading, with over 3/4 of our students meeting the expected passage rates. 62% of our students grew at least one placement level from beginning of the year to end of year in grades K through 3 reading. 41% of the students grew at least one placement level from beginning of the year to middle of the year in all grades. Technology programs alone cannot support the growth of learners. While our iReady data can help us identify gaps, it is the educators in the classroom, armed with new knowledge through the study of the science of reading, that are impacting our learners. Region 4 teachers have completed 3 units of study from the Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling, better known as the LETTERS program, diving more deeply into the study of how the brain processes information and impact literacy. As we continue this year into units 4 through 8, teachers will learn increased strategies towards supporting students with making meaning, vocabulary development, and targeted interventions. Teachers having this increased knowledge allows them to utilize district resources in a more targeted and intentional way. The second board goal that I will discuss this evening is closing opportunity gaps, which focuses on our 4-year graduation rate. In Region 4, each high school is expected to have a matriculation team to monitor the progress of students in each cohort. In Region 4, our core team and our high school graduation coaches support the matriculation team's work. Each matriculation team uses district data reports and spreadsheets to monitor each student's grades, credit attainment, progress on credentialing pathways, internship hours, and other data to support students towards graduation or matriculation to the next grade level. Region 4 high schools showed an increase in their graduation rates from 2022 to 2023, which shows that our efforts of these matriculation teams is paying off. I would also like to point out that during the 2022-23 school year, Region 4 had 186 Columbus Promise applicants for cohort 23. To allow time for our Centennial students to speak to the other guardrails, tonight I will only focus on our strategies being used for Guardrail 4, ensuring a culturally responsive staff. As stated in the beginning of this presentation, one of our core values in Region 4 is critical conversations around race, racism, and equity. Region 4 principals and our core team have engaged in a number of professional developments focused on examining equity issues and creating more culturally responsive schools as equity-centered leaders. Some of the PD includes 2 book studies using the books Unconscious Bias and Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. We've also worked with the Leadership Academy, focusing on their culturally responsive school leadership practice areas. This school year, we are working with the Ohio Department of Education's Office of Educator Effectiveness to guide us with the use of ODE's Equity Gap Analysis tool. This tool is designed to assist educators in assessing the state of equity and culturally responsiveness for 6 comprehensive educational equity components. Each school administrator and their teams will administer the Equity Gap Analysis tool and identify one component to focus on during the school year in an effort to ensure each child has access to relevant and challenging experiences regardless of their race, gender, ethnicity, language, disability, or any other differentiating factor. I would like to end this presentation tonight by highlighting some Region 4 bright spots. All 3 Region 4 high schools are ranked in the top 500 schools in the state of Ohio according to U.S. News and World Report rankings. Region 4 is the home of the district's language immersion academic pathway. As you heard in Dr. Chapman's opening remarks on video, World Language Middle School received recently, I'm going to try to say it in close to French as I can, the Label Français Éducation seal, in a special ceremony and a chance. They also had a chance to tour the building. But this was a prestigious honor in that very few schools get that award. They were one of 65 schools in the United States and only one of 8 schools in the Midwest to receive this honor. At Whetstone High School, student Damian Fairley received the patent, which is a weighted base that supports a trash or recycling bin. It has a metal mechanism that attaches to the bin from the axle to keep it from rolling over. This is a good example of students leading the way using the portrait of a graduate trait of creativity. Ridgeview Middle School students participated in a unique opportunity provided by Columbus City Schools for middle schools or for select middle schools to lead the way in reimagining how their school cafeterias look and feel through a student-designed charrette last school year. Working with a design firm, Triad Architects, these students created design portfolios and pin boards to design furnishings and create more modern atmospheres for their school cafeterias. These students' ideas were used to purchase furnishings for their school cafeteria, which were unveiled this school year. Through this event, Ridgeview Middle School students were able to bolster their portrait of a graduate attributes of communication, creativity, and critical thinking. And last but not least, in the summer of 2020, a research associate from Harvard University looking across the nation for case studies to complete the final course of her school management and leadership certification program. Her team identified Centennial High School as a standout urban public school. Her work with Principal Stephanie Porter would end up becoming more than just a one-day event. The researcher would spend the entire year working with Principal Porter to learn more about her commitment increasing the school's achievement and graduation rates through personalized education, fostering a sense of belonging for all students, and encouraging teachers to collaborate in a student-focused manner across disciplines. Not only was Centennial High School selected to be a part of one of the recorded case studies, Principal Porter was asked to serve as one of 5 featured administrators in the final Harvard Graduate School course, Leading Learning. Thank you for the time to present about Region 4. At this time, I would like to welcome that exemplary administrator from Region 4, our very own Principal Stephanie Porter, and the Centennial High School administrative team.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Centennial High School, home of the stars. I would like to introduce my team. Miss Kay Fields Battle is one of my assistant principals. If you guys could please stand. Mr. Adam Clausen is another one of my assistant principals, and Miss Elizabeth Miller is a leadership intern with us this year.
Centennial High School's mission is that 100% of Centennial High School students are prepared for success by earning at least 2 seals upon graduation. Many of our students earn way more than 2 seals. We exist to rigorously prepare our students for success after high school on their unique pathway to the workforce, military, vocational training, and/or post-secondary options. Our core values are: we believe growth is possible, we encourage creative self-expression and problem solving, and we believe to be accountable to yourself and others. So what makes Centennial great? A few years ago, as we've been here, we've been looking at ways that we needed to improve to make sure that our students' needs were being addressed. A couple of the changes that we made: we adjusted our teacher-based teams to meet by grade level instead of by content area. This gave our teachers an opportunity to talk about instructional strategies and things that were going on in the classroom and how they connect to individual students in that grade level. We've seen a lot of success with this over the last few years and have implemented it. We probably started it about 5 years ago. We also have implemented First Friday meetings with all of our grade levels. There are town hall meetings where we talk about graduation requirements, on-track rates, and all kinds of things that are coming up for that grade level with the students. We have a PBIS implementation for our shout-outs. So staff and students are allowed to shout out anyone in the building. We post those up on a bulletin board, and then we mail them home, or if they're for a staff member, we put them in the mailbox at the end of each month. And parents really enjoy getting that in the mail as a letter to say that your student was shouted out by somebody at school. We have a very active Centennial Booster and Parent-Teacher Association. They help us out with things like concessions, at sporting events, at our robotics competitions, at our theater production. They host a dinner under the stars and a silent auction in the spring as well. So we're very fortunate to have their support in all areas of Centennial High School. We utilize cohort spreadsheets. We've been using those for the last 9 years. Each cohort in our school has a spreadsheet that's shared with every staff member, so every teacher can see exactly where a student is on their on-track rate towards graduation. Each spreadsheet is exactly the same, so it travels with the students as they move through their 4 years of high school. So it includes things like their internship hours, any credit recovery they may have, all of their testing requirements, and their seal obtainment. We have a very early focus on SEALs, internship hours, and graduation pathways. About 5 years ago, I created a position here called a freshman matriculation coach because I didn't have a graduation coach. And we had noticed that if we focused on the freshmen, our graduation rate was then higher. So I created a freshman matriculation coach position. She meets with every single freshman before the end of the semester. She monitors all of their grades. She works with them on internship hours, and she helps them identify which 2 SEALs they think they want to get throughout their high school year. Obviously, we don't hold them to that, but we at least are having those conversations and trying to get those started as early as possible. We found that if we're talking to students and they happen to have a job, we can go ahead and get them on a pathway to an Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal during their freshman year. This year, we have a new program called Wednesday Works. Our students are going to talk about it a little bit, but what we are doing is we are splitting up all of our students with all the staff members in the building. It's an hour of time on Wednesdays that students can use for remediation, intervention, credit recovery, but also things like those seniors who just need additional time to work on college essays or scholarship applications, or if there's students that need internship hours and they need help during the school day of getting those. So we'll be starting Wednesday Works in October, and we're really looking forward to seeing how that helps with some of our academic needs, but also our social and emotional learning, those needs that the students are having, and those connections that they can have in a smaller group with a staff member. So at this time, I would like to bring up my senior council. Please welcome Tia, Miriam, Monica, and Harmony.
Good evening. Before we begin this presentation, I would like to welcome all Columbus City School Board members with a special note to President Adair, a fellow star. I would also like to welcome Columbus City Schools Superintendent, Dr. Angela Chapman, Region 4 Director, Dr. Keith Harris, and the Centennial High School Administrative Team, Principal Stephanie Porta, Assistant Principal Kay Fields Battle, Assistant Principal Adam Clausen, as well as our community. I am Tia Ward, President of the Centennial High School Senior Class.
My name is Miriam Seck, and I am Vice President of Centennial High School Senior Class.
My name is Monica Khalil. I'm the Secretary of Centennial High School Senior Class.
My name is Harmony Manzi. I am the class historian of Centennial High School Senior Class. You might say, why is Centennial great? Well, here's what great means to our school. G stands for goal-oriented. Students are expected to have goals on the way, pathways to success. Respectful, which you accept someone for who they are. E stands for exemplary. Excel at what you do and be an excellent role model to others. A stands for academic, working hard in school plus doing your best. T stands for tradition, which is our school and student culture. Stars are great? Yes, we are. GREAT is part of our PBIS initiative. We also created a QR code for any staff or student that needs help. You can scan the code, fill it out, the Google form, because stars are here to help.
The Board of Education has developed goals and guardrails for Columbus City Schools. Support intervention systems, prioritize a whole child focus, align resources equitably, and ensure a culturally responsive staff. Support intervention systems. The superintendent will not allow the multi-tiered systems of supports for students' needs to be under-resourced. Prioritize a whole child focus. The superintendent will not allow the district to ignore a whole child approach. Support intervention systems. At Centennial, when it comes to multi-tiered systems of support, we offer many different resources and tools that ensure a high level of support and understanding. We have a mantra we live by known as GREAT, stands for goal-oriented, respectful, exemplary, academic, and tradition. We encourage both students and staff to abide by this mantra, for it creates a healthy and supportive learning environment. Prioritize a whole child focus. At Centennial, some of the resources we have include, Hey, I Need Help. It's a flyer linked to a QR code that is available around the school. Students can scan the code and fill out the form asking for help for themselves or others. We take into account that not everyone is comfortable directly asking for help, so it's important that there are options that fit the needs of everyone. We also offer after-school help to those students struggling in their courses. Teachers are present to provide them with a one-on-one learning environment. Align resources equitably. The superintendent will not allow any region to be without strong learning communities. Ensure a culturally responsive staff. The superintendent will not allow cultural non-responsivity to impact student experience or staff effectiveness. Align resources equitably. At Centennial, we have very strong learning communities. New this year is our Wednesday Works program that provides an hour between 4th and 5th period classes to provide students with remediation or enrichment. Some of these include business classes, adulting classes, finance classes, and many more beneficial classes that will have a lasting impact. The district provides us with an internship coordinator, matriculation coach, and I Know I Can partnership, the Columbus Promise, as well as technology resources that all contribute to the overall success of the students. Culturally responsive staff. At Centennial, we have a very diverse community regarding both students and staff. The goal is to make sure that if a student is struggling, we have a solution for it, no matter who they are, what they believe, how they behave, or where they come from. In my experience, I have noticed that when I need help, the teachers and administration meet you where you are and they don't diminish you for not understanding. As stated before, some students aren't always comfortable asking for help, and they may find it in their best interest to struggle silently. But the teachers at Centennial go beyond just doing their job. They see you, they hear you, they feel for you, and they will do everything in their power to help you.
Centennial has earned both local and national achievements. Centennial High School is ranked number 5,860 out of almost 18,000 schools in the national ranking. We're ranked number 220 in the state and number 2 in the district. Schools are ranked on their performance on state-required tests, graduation, and how well they prepare their students for college. We are ranked in the top third of schools nationally and the top 20% in Ohio. Our graduation rate is consistently above 92%. It is normal for over 1/3 of our student body to earn honor roll every quarter. Over 1/3 of every class has over a 3.0 cumulative GPA. Demographics and diversity. We have a very diverse population. We desire to honor every STAR student and staff member. We have Black History Month and international festival celebrations each year. We also love and support our exceptional populations.
Columbus City Schools allow students to lead the way. The district has developed Portraits of a Graduate. The portrait has 6 components. First is adaptability. Students at Centennial High School have had to adapt to many new protocols, such as security, metal detectors, as well as many new staff members. This change has had an impact on many returning students, causing them to have to create new connections with teachers. Next is communications. At Centennial, we believe in individuality. Every student should be allowed to express himself distinctly through communication. For example, Centennial holds formal poetry slam winners and competitors. Events like our Black History Month Assembly and Cultural Fest, students get up in front of their peers and share their talents, such as singing, rapping, spoken word, and even sign language. Creativity. At Centennial, I personally believe that creativity is our strongest asset. We have talented artists, dancers, singers, musicians, and poets. For instance, we sold out our last theater production, The Beauty and the Beast, and we hope to accomplish this again for our upcoming productions in November and early May. Critical thinking. At Centennial, teachers prepare their students for situations and circumstances in which critical thinking skills are quite significant. Students at Centennial separate themselves amongst other students because they are not only able to analyze and apply evidence, but they look for the bigger picture. Global empathy. At Centennial, we hold a beautiful, diverse community. With our traditional cultural fest, this allows students to feel free to be open with their culture, all while their peers get to learn and connect with one another. Lastly is technology. The world now is centered around technology. At Centennial, students can take tech-based classes where they are able to merge technological intelligence with communication skills, creativity, and critical thinking, like our MOS program, all while moving one step closer to graduation requirements.
And these are our Portraits of a Graduates from 2023. And onward to 2024, at Centennial, the sky is the limit. Thank you.
And to our seniors and our students who shared their perspective and insight and their experience at Centennial. Miriam, Tia, Harmony, and Monica, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I'd also like to thank Principal Porter and her team for sharing, as well as Dr. Harris. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. At this time, we will now transition into our next presentation, which will highlight more context and more information on the state's recent report card ratings. So at this time, I would like to invite Dr. Russ Brown, our Chief of Strategy and Performance, to the podium.
Good evening. Tough act to follow. Good evening, President Adair, Vice President Vera, Superintendent Chapman, members of the board and community. It's a pleasure to be here and have the opportunity to give an update on our state report card. Some of this should look fairly familiar because we reviewed it last year, and we're just looking at the changes that have occurred over time. So the purpose today, again, is to look at our new report card, what it looks like, how our goals connect to the report card, how our students performed. Move that up a little bit. And how our goals will support ongoing movement on the report card as we move forward. So last year, when the report card came out, there were 5 components. Those 5 components remain. We have an achievement component, a progress component, a gap closing component, a graduation rate component, and an early literacy component. What's changed this year, for the first time, we'll have an overall rating for the system, an overall rating for schools as well. Each of the 5 components receive a star rating of 1 to 5. And these are all combined in an overall manner to set up an overall star rating for the system as a whole. Again, this is the first year that the system as a whole got an overall star rating. And again, we're just going to walk through and look at the ratings as we move through. The first of the components I'm going to look at is early literacy. And obviously, early literacy aligns very well with our board goal for reading. The early literacy component has 3 indicators tied to it, or 3 elements. The first is how students performed on the 3rd grade reading proficiency test. That accounts for 40% of this, or 40% of the weight of this component. Promotion to 4th grade, which accounts for 35% of the component. And then improving K-3 literacy, improving the proportion of kids who are on grade level as they move from kindergarten to 1st grade, 1st to 2nd, and 2nd to 3rd. That one, because it looks at that transition, lags. It's like the graduation rate, it lags a year behind because you have to know where kids ended at this year. So when we're looking at that, that will actually be the transition of kids from where they were in the 2020-21 school year to the 21-22 school year for that component. What happened last year in terms of that growth and that movement between kindergarten and 3rd grade will show up on next year's report card. On this component, I'm pleased to say that our students showed improvement. We earned 53.4% of the points on this component this year. That's up from 52.4% the year before. And how did that happen? We, again, saw that movement in the prior year of kids going from below grade level reading to on grade level reading as they transitioned from kindergarten through 3rd grade. The outcome here was 1 star. To move forward to 2 stars, we'd need to earn 58% of the points on this component. That's actually quite a steep lift for us. Again, our board goals and our interim goals are absolutely aligned to this because if you think about those interim goals, they're all about growing kids and moving kids to proficiency earlier as we move those cohorts from kindergarten through 3rd grade. For this component, while the system as a whole had 1 star, we had 5 buildings that had 3 stars or more on it. And it's, I think, important to note that we're not alone as a system. All the urban 8 districts had 1 star on this component as well. Clearly, reading proficiency is related to our overall achievement, but we also are going to be proposing shortly a math goal, a middle school math goal. I think it's been evident for a while that there's a challenge in middle school math. When you look at some of the data that I'm going to show you, you'll see that math lags reading. And so we're looking at student achievement holistically, both in reading and mathematics as we move forward. And achievements measured through the performance index. And I honestly think that this is probably the most comprehensive way to look at academic performance for the system because it captures performance on every test. So every test a student takes, be it reading, math, science, social studies, every test goes into this. So as performance increases, the value of that for the index increases as well. So for every test performance that the student has, there's a designated performance level that goes with it. The lowest performance level is limited. The next one is basic, and then we have proficient, and then you move upward into accomplished and advanced as students move upward above proficiency. Every time a student transitions upward a level, there's a greater weight given to that performance on that test. So as students move up through that, that's how you move the performance index upward. So let's look at how our students performed on the proficiency test this year. There's a lot of information here on this slide, so let me walk through it. This shows outcomes in reading for the last 3 years, in grades 3 through 8, and then the high school test that's tied to graduation. What you'll see on this is, if we go back to 2020, 2021, there have been gains in every tested grade level. So if you look at that far column that says 2-year gains, comparing 2022, 23 to 2020, 2021, you'll see that there's an upward movement on every one of those. And last year, there were gains in 5 out of 7 of those grade levels. And I might add, the grades 4 and 6, where we saw declines, the state saw declines as well. So that maybe points to a larger issue with the assessment at the state level. But again, on a 2-year span, we see upward movement across all of those. The 2-year gains actually exceed or match those of the state in every grade level. Mathematics looks very similar. So if you look at mathematics scores, again, you see that we've had greater than 1% gains in 6 out of 7 of the tested grade levels, going from the 21-22 school year to the 22-23 school year. And if we look at 2 years, we have gains at every level. And again, those gains exceed all the gains made at the state level as well, except in grade 6. So overall, we saw quite a lot of movement over the last couple of years, both in reading and mathematics. So with that, we increased the percent of performance index points from 50.4 to 51.7. Now again, every grade level in reading and mathematics, we saw improvements, and yet it only translates to a fairly small improvement on the performance index. And just for some context on that. In order to receive 3 stars on this, we would have to get to 70%. And right now we have 2 stars. Our focus on growth and the inclusion of a math goal supports this because, again, it elevates the importance of focusing on mathematics. And like we've done with reading, a middle school mathematics goal will have implications for interim goals that go back into elementary school as well. And just, again, for a little bit of context here, 44.6% of our buildings scored, and that's 50 buildings in total, earned 2 or more stars on this component as they move through. And again, all of the Ohio 8 were either at 2 stars. There were 2 systems that only had 1 star in this component. So our performance, again, very comparable to the Ohio 8 on this as well. The next section has to do with growth. They call it progress, but it's really the growth measure. This is entirely anchored to the value-added computation at the state level, which is measurement of growth across years. It looks at the entire history of a student's testing performance on the state test. It's anchored to 3rd grade. 3rd grade's the baseline. And then as students move forward through 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, it accounts for all those tests as they move forward. So when you think about it, and you think about a longitudinal measure like that, it's most stable when the educational sort of format stays the same and the tests stay the same throughout it. So obviously the pandemic still has some disruption on this, because for students, when we think across that, when students are in 8th grade, there were some disruptions in their educational format. That means, in short, that this measure will probably go up and down for a couple more years until we have stability in terms of kids being in in-person instruction with the same assessments over time. So again, we earned 2 stars on this, and again, our ongoing laser-like focus on growth will help with this. And if you look at our data, we've been focused very much on reading, and if we were just to base this on reading, we would have 4 stars. But when you introduce math, it lowers it. And hence the need to really focus on math as we move forward as well. And again, for a little bit of context, 61 of our schools earned 3 or more stars on this component, with 12 of our buildings having 5 stars on this component. And 5 stars means that a building not only did they exceed the expectations at the state level, they did it by a substantial margin. The effect size of that was quite large. Moving on to the gap closing component. This is probably the most difficult one of the measures for us to perform well on, because the goals or the targets for this are all set at the state level. They were set based on state performance, and this is how the state conveyed to the federal government their expectations for change over time. So there are annual measurable objectives, and they are common to every system across the state. So it's the same target for every system, irrespective of where you are. And those targets go up every year in an incremental fashion moving forward. So our outcome here is 2 stars, again, driven primarily by the performance of our English language learners and our substantial improvements in attendance this year. Again, our continued focus on attendance, MTSS, which again helps us differentiate support for students, and growth, the focus on math is going to be really important as well. One of the things I'd like you all to take away from here is, growth touches a lot of different things here. These measures aren't discrete. So when we talk about gap closure, it's also picking up achievement, it's also picking up growth, and so it sort of double dips on these as it moves through. Finally, we're going to get around to talking about the graduation goal and the graduation component. These are perfectly aligned. So again, for the state, they've changed this to include both 4- and 5-year graduation rates. The 4-year graduation rate accounts for 60% of this goal, and the 5-year graduation rate accounts for 40%. I actually really like that the state went down this road, because it incentivizes us to continue to work with students through that 5th year and get more kids across the stage. It's a great investment for our community to lean into that space, and I'm glad that the schools and our system get credit for that investment of time and effort. Again, this lags, because if you think about it, we just had a graduation in August, so that'll all show up next year on the report card. So when we're talking about these numbers this year, they're actually for the 21-22 cohort as we went through. And as a caveat here, next year's report card will be anchored to the permanent graduation requirements, and they're by far the most rigorous graduation requirements to date, because they include not just the basics and whether or not you've earned credits, not just competency, passing tests, but also readiness. And you have to hit all 3 of those indicators, much like you've heard the folks from Centennial here articulate their plan for today. Better than me, by the way. So our 4-year graduation rate for the 21-22 class was 79.6%, and our 5-year graduation rate was 82.8%. So our weighted average graduation rate was 80.9%, and that's 1 star. To be able to get to 2 stars, we'd have to have a graduation rate of 84%. So again, it's a bit of a climb from where we are to be able to get there. And on this one, happy to say that 5 of our high schools earned 3 or more stars on this. We heard from Centennial, they had 3. But we also had other schools that had 3 or more stars as well. Statewide, all but 2 of the Ohio 8 districts only earned 1 star on this as well. So again, urban education, we are much in line with our counterparts around the state. So getting around to the overall star rating at the end here. Again, this is the first year for this rating. Ratings constructed from the 5 components that we've talked about already, and they are not equally weighted. You'll see that achievement and progress actually are worth twice the other components. So over 57% of the total weight of the final rating for the schools is based on achievement and progress or growth. Hence, the importance of focusing on both of those things as we move forward, because they carry a lot of weight in the overall rating. Again, we earned 2 stars on this, and upward movement for us over time will require really a sustained effort, because as you've heard me go through each of these components, where we are and where we need to be to move to the next level, there's usually quite a bit of a gap there. It's not an easy climb. It's not something that's going to happen in 1 year. It's going to take sustained effort to get there. Let me back up just for a second. 42% of our buildings, though, earn 3 or more stars on this. So again, as a system, we have a lot of diversity of performance, and we have some very high-performing schools within the system. And again, in comparison to the Ohio 8, all the Ohio 8 districts fell someplace in the 2 or 2.5 star category. And at the state level, the state's designation for a 2 or 2.5 star building is the same, or district is the same in that the state suggests that systems that have 2 stars or 2.5 stars need support in order to be able to move forward and continue to close gaps. So again, for us to be able to improve our status on these components and the overall rating, it's going to take sustained effort over time. I think it's promising that we've seen improvements on these. It's promising that we've seen improvements on many of these indicators along the way, but at the same time, there's a long ways to go to be able to close the gaps that we need to. For our K-8 students, it's going to be incredibly important to continue to focus on growth. It's particularly important for the kids who are furthest behind. We have a fairly large portion of students who score in the limited area on the test, and we need to move them forward. And as we move them forward, it'll show up on the performance index, and again, will help them get closer to where they need to be in terms of their academic performance. For the students who are furthest behind, stretch growth, something we heard Dr. Harris talking about, the emphasis on moving kids forward and stretching their growth so that they close that gap becomes incredibly important. For our high schools, again, improving the high school graduation rate, we heard the roadmap here at Centennial. They're pretty clear about it. You know, it's the focus on matriculation, it's the engagement, it's maintaining relationships with the students and meeting their needs. It's keeping them in school and keeping them on track. Again, the way we work at this point to monitor our cohorts and their on-track status, frankly, partially modeled off of our time here at Centennial a couple years back. Our ongoing focus on growth will support movement on all of these components, from early literacy all the way to graduation, and finally the overall star rating for the system as a whole. So with that, what questions might you have?
Dr. Brown, for providing this important update on our state report card. Before we jump into questions, which I know our board members have questions, there's additional context that I would like to share. First of all, we know that our rating, our current rating from the state indicates that as a district, we need continuous support and there's significant room for improvement. We also know that the state report card is not the only indicator of success for a school or a district, and that is quoted directly from ODE's website. Again, our board is committed to embracing student outcomes-focused governance model, and as a part of that model, we know that student outcomes don't change unless adult behavior change, and that change starts with us. I'll be very clear, it starts with me. I would like to share just a few of the strategies that we are doing to address these changes at the system level. Dr. Brown highlighted a few of them, but I want to be very clear with our board and our community because we've recognized that several of our schools have made steady and consistent progress in several of the measures that we have discussed tonight. And again, overall, 42% of our buildings have earned 3 or more stars as an overall rating in the district, and we do not want to diminish the efforts that our schools and our staff have made to improve student outcomes and stay focused on our #1 priority as a district, educating and preparing our students for college, career, and beyond. As a district, we have made considerable investments in early literacy resources and core curricular resources and professional development to increase the capacity of our teachers to teach all children how to read, again aligned to the science of reading. We have prioritized system-wide professional development, focused on improving core instruction, that's Tier 1 instruction. When we look at our scores and we look at the areas of opportunity, we know that in order to accelerate learning outcomes, we cannot focus on remediation. We have to focus on acceleration for all students. That means every student, no matter what grade level, what classroom, every student should be making a year's worth of progress and growth every year. We will continue to focus on matriculation teams and our matriculation coaches at the secondary level to ensure that all of our high schools have a dedicated team of professionals that are meeting regularly in real time to monitor, provide supports and interventions to our students before they get off track. This is work that cannot wait until our students are in 12th grade. This work begins earlier, it begins in 9th grade. And we have certainly established the systems across the district to ensure that this is happening at every campus. As Dr. Brown mentioned, the report card is not only measuring early literacy, it's also measuring math. That is counting, it's captured and it's counted more than once across the report card. So I appreciate the board's effort in making sure that we establish and transition one of our goals to a guardrail and standing up a math goal, which will be happening in coming months. We've been talking about it, and that is in the works. In addition, we know that there are some schools in our district that are struggling. Our schools that are struggling in all 5 of these categories. And we want our board and our community to know that we will have a laser-like focus on ensuring that we are providing the necessary supports and resources to meet the specific needs of our students and making sure that we are leveraging all of the available resources, including federal grant opportunities that will be provided to support our Tier 3 schools that require more comprehensive support. And in closing, I want our board and community to know that we take this rating and this report card very seriously. We share the sense of urgency in our community, our staff members, our teachers, our principals, our parents. We know that we must do better, and we are committed to making sure that we prioritize improving student outcomes and making sure that we stay focused on the main thing, and that is teaching and learning. My vision for our district is to make sure not only do our students achieve their goals individually, each grade level, but also that we are preparing our students for college, career, and beyond. And that means that our students are not only graduating with the diploma, but they are also graduating with all of the attributes demonstrating that they have embraced the attributes of a portrait of a graduate. They are graduating with work-based learning experiences, credentials and certificates that prepare them for their college and career and goals beyond secondary. Again, we want our board and our community to know that as a district, we are committed to doing the heavy lifting and the hard work that lies ahead to ensure that we are providing our students with the opportunities that they need to be successful, whether that's in 1st grade, 7th grade, or 12th grade. And again, I am confident that our board's focus on our board goals and our guardrails, early literacy, matriculation, and our soon-to-be goal, math, and our guardrails will provide us with the direction that we need to cascade these goals across the entire organization and ensure that everyone has the same high expectations that we do for each and every one of our students across the district. Thank you, Dr. Brown. And board members, at this time, we will entertain any questions that you may have.
Board Member Beckerly.
Thank you for taking us through this data, Dr. Brown, and I concur with everything you just said, Dr. Chapman. I just want to focus on a couple of tidbits that you said, one of which is making the main thing the main thing. And having spent as much time as I did in the classroom, I think that's where the board goals and the guardrails are the most effective. Because what we're doing is we're saying, these are the main things, and this is how we're going to measure whether we get there. Now, I think now that we've been at it for a while, adding the math goal, making sure our metrics are appropriate, doing a reset, so to speak, now that we understand the system better, is really appropriate coming up. We have to do it quickly and get it in place quickly, but I think that's exactly what we should be doing, and I support all of that. And I just want to encourage us to focus on getting that right and pursuing what we believe is important for us and how to measure it, and take this report card information as data, but not spend any time chasing after it as the goal. Because there's a lot of, there's a lot of metrics, and what happens is the main thing isn't the main thing anymore. We've got all these different things we're chasing after. And then nothing happens, and we don't get any. So I really think that's an important thing that you said that I want to lift up a little bit. We got to get the main thing right. We got to articulate it. We might do some adjusting of goals and guardrails and the metrics that are leading indicators, and we have to do that with some efficiency. But I just want to elevate that this is important to understand this data, but it is not the main thing. The main thing is what we decide is the main thing for our kids and our community.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chapman. I just wanted to highlight, it is critically important that we maintain that steady growth that we've talked about, and that's the point of the goals and guardrails. I do want to highlight that what I see in the data is that our students are achieving, and they are making that growth in pretty much every category. And when we are looking specifically at the reading, over 2 years, our third grade teams have increased scores in double digits, so that's 11.6%. That's hard work by our teachers, our staffs, our intervention aides, our principals, our families, our kids. And so we are working hard, and we know we have a lot more to go, but we also have to make sure that our little humans that are actually the ones sitting there taking the tests feel that their community is there to support them. So, student outcomes don't change until adult behavior changes. And so I'm going to encourage everyone, as we are talking about this report card, to remember the little people that are in those chairs that take the test and know that they are doing their best, and we are seeing gains, and the adults around them are supporting them, including in math. Even though we know that's a challenge, we look at fourth grade, our fourth grade teams over 2 years at 14% increase. 14% increase. So there are wonderful highlights here. We know we can improve. We know we can, and that's why we've put these in place. That's why Dr. Chapman is speaking with such conviction, because we know we can do better. As a community, we can do better for our students. But I do want to highlight those, and Dr. Brown did that very well in his presentation. So we will continue to grow under the leadership of Dr. Chapman, under our board goals and guardrails. We will show that continuous progress, and we will hold the superintendent accountable for making those gains that we know we can as a community. Dr. Pierce.
Thank you for the presentation. So I have a couple of questions. Dr. Brown, you mentioned STEEP a lot during the presentation. We're seeing growth. We're seeing 1 percentage point of growth, right? So we know we have work to do. Dr. Chapman, you did a great job of laying out what the board's responsibilities are as it relates to partnering with you and your team in earnest to impact academic success, right? So the board's responsibilities are to establish goals, establish and support the vision. Administration, you all have, and Dr. Brown, this is your word, STEEP task, right, of increasing those scores. So my questions relate to your strategies around that, right? So as we think about, for example, the 5th grade showing the highest gains in terms of that literacy score, are we seeing anything that we can replicate and scale across grade bands so we can see similar gains?
I would say that in my narrative, I tried to provide a high-level overview of how the system is responding to the data and the strategies that we are focusing on at the system level. As you all know, that in the past couple of years, we have made significant investments in core instructional resources. So one of our guardrails is around MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems of support. Essentially, this guardrail establishes, and this is language that the administration is working on, that we need to provide rigorous and relevant core instruction for all students. And so as a district, we have made significant investments in professional development for our teachers, and we've had new adoptions in ELA and math for all of our students to ensure that every student across our district, no matter what zip code they live in, have access to a core guaranteed and viable curriculum. In addition to that, as a part of the MTSS structure, we provide intentional and differentiated support to all of our students. All of our teachers and administrators and staff have been provided with extensive professional development on MTSS, which means how do you provide core instruction to all of our students? What does that look like? And then how do you provide intervention to the students who need it most? That might be Tier 2 intervention. It might be Tier 3 intervention, which is even more intensive than a Tier 2 intervention. As a district, we have invested in intervention resources to ensure that that's not left to chance. Removing the opportunity for creating existing or creating more equity gaps where students don't have access to core guaranteed and viable curriculum or intervention resources. So those are some of the major investments that we have made as a district and as a system, again, aligned to our board goals and guardrails, aligned to our strategic plan, and in response to the data, what the data is telling me what needs to happen.
So you're connecting the growth that we saw in the 5th grade to those resources and to those interventions and the viable curriculum.
And the professional development. If you recall, when PDK did the curriculum audit, one of the major findings of the audit is that one of the challenges that we experienced across the district is that we had equity issues and that some students did not have access to a guaranteed viable curriculum that was standards-based, aligned to grade level standards. And that was not because we didn't have the best intentions in place. That was because as a district, we didn't make the necessary investments to ensure that we had grade level curriculum accessible to all of our students. We have closed that gap. We can ensure that now that all of our students have access to grade level content in ELA and math.
So my next question then leads to math. So we're starting, or we can anticipate seeing even more gains in our literacy in ELA, right? In terms of the resources that we need to support math improvements, that starts at the board level of establishing that new goal related to mathematics. When can we expect to see your recommendations for that goal related to mathematics and that additional goal that is then recommended to be moved to guardrails, being moved to guardrails?
We are working on that now, but that has been in the works. So for example, we have already invested in new math adoption for all of our students. Again, that's K through 12. We have already made the necessary investments to ensure that our students are taking their interim assessments aligned to the grade level standards. So we don't have to wait until the next state report card to know whether or not our students are making progress or growth. Our teachers have access to the interim assessments and the platform with using iReady, that shows us what specific skills our students need to know in order to make progress. And they are, as Dr. Harris mentioned earlier in our presentation, all of our students have their learning pathways, but they have access to, again, continue to make progress on that. So again, for me, as for parents, I would want to know specifically where my student is in reading and math. And the iReady instructional tool gives us that very specific granular data. Looking at the district report card tells us about the district. Looking at the school report card tells us about the progress of the school. But as a parent, for all the parents that are watching, you want to know your child's literacy address. Where are they performing in literacy? What skills, where are they strong? What skills do they need improvement? And our iReady tool gives us that hands-on data in real time for each specific student for reading as well as for math.
I appreciate that response. I appreciate you and your team's commitment to making sure that our staff has those resources ahead of our board, then supporting the establishment of that goal. My request in this meeting is that we bring that goal, your recommendation for that goal, to us as soon as possible, so we then have, again, a clear established vision, goals, and strategies to get us to where we need to see the improvement happening for our students.
Absolutely.
Thank you. My next question then relates to, in some of our urban environments, we often see a correlation between socioeconomic status and performance on these types of tests. Is our team seeing any types of those correlations that we as a board should be aware of as it relates to us being committed to our goals and guardrails?
So we know that that's not just unique to urban environments. The relationship between
it's all over. Do we see any correlations?
Yeah, we see correlations between that. Those are, the challenge, of course, is that in our system, our students are all identified as being in need. So we have to look at that by neighborhood and using census data, but we've looked at that over time. And the census data by neighborhood, when you start looking at income levels by neighborhood and performance of students by neighborhood, yes, there's a correlation there. And again, this has been established across the entire country. It's almost like.
Dr. Brown, you know where we're about to go with this.
No, I don't.
So in the past, what our administration has given us data on is because we do have open enrollment, it is quite difficult to get at that data because we have students that are leaving from particular neighborhoods and going in particular schools. So my question is, as we're thinking about that open enrollment, as we think about how we have our district in regions and we are promoting regions, are we seeing anything that is showing us that there is still that strong correlation between performance on standardized tests and socioeconomic status? And what are we doing if we are seeing a correlation between that to negate or to help our students who might need those additional resources?
So our regional model is, and I think we've talked about this before, difficult to interpret because the students who attend in a region often don't live in the region. So if we attribute students back to where they live and look at performance, it has an amazing leveling effect in that regard because, you know, again, kids are our families are self-selecting and acting upon that. We do have a researcher that's been pretty actively looking at the impact of lottery and whether or not the lottery is closing gaps for students. I don't want to get ahead of myself on that. But I think the short answer is we don't see a lot of evidence that that's doing that.
And I think what our board, what our challenge is, I think as we look at these results, and Board Member Beckerly kind of tying into what you said earlier, we need to figure out where we want to focus in on. And one of those areas that we want to focus in on is ensuring that all of our students are getting the equitable resources that they need to be successful. So in that respect, if there is a policy, if there is a procedure, if there is something that we as a district are doing that is negatively impacting the ability to put those equitable resources in our schools, in our regions, then it's our job as a board to make sure that we're being mindful of that and taking action to move away from those policies and procedures.
Dr. Pierce, thank you for pushing us and I want to connect this work back to one of our guardrails, equitable resources and opportunities. We will be talking about that a little bit more later tonight, but I also would like to name and acknowledge that we know that some of our schools need more resources. We would like to name and acknowledge that some of our students need more supports. Some of us as adults need more supports, right? But as a part of our MTSS work, we have the structures in place to ensure that our students have those supports, but at the system level, we are working on an equitable-based resource strategy and equitable-based resource allocation model that ensures that as a district, we are providing the necessary resources. That may mean more for some schools, less for others, and we're being responsive to the data to ensure that our schools and our students have what they need to be successful.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No additional.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. I just had a question. When you mentioned that our parents have access to the data that they need to know where their child is mapped. And a lot of times we ask our community and our parents to engage with our students. On that mapping, is there a list of resources or items that a parent can say, okay, here's where my child is, this is what I can do, instead of, because a lot of times I think what we try to do is the school or the district tries to do it, but if it was made available to the parent right away, especially since they're already doing the mapping, is that a possibility?
Yes, thank you, Board Member Reyes, for that question. We certainly want to ensure to all of our families that when when our students take the iReady assessment, that beginning of the year assessment, which they're taking right now in many of our schools across the district, but after those assessments are complete, we actually have a student report. There's district level reports, there's school reports, there's classroom reports, as well as student reports for each individual student for each subject. So there'll be a report for reading and then a report for math. That report will show how the student is performing in reading, and it will show how they're performing compared to their peers. It will also show the areas of strength and the areas of opportunity and specific strategies for what areas of support and how the student can continue to focus on areas to make improvements. But the best part is that the iReady pathways, again, we encourage all of our students to engage with the software. All of that is built in. So for example, if I am a third grader and I need support with comprehension, when I log into iReady, I will be exposed to a series of lessons and activities that will support and help me with the goals that I need to be, to make steady progress and improvement. So all of the pathways, that's that differentiated support that we are providing our students. Perhaps some students have mastered the skills for a particular grade level. They will actually get enrichment opportunities when they are participating and engaging in their pathways. If a student needs intervention, the pathway will provide them with the necessary lessons that will provide that intervention. So it's all built in. And so we encourage our families to check in with your students tonight and ask them if they've taken their iReady assessment for the school year this year, which establishes the baseline. We also invite our families to check in with their students and ask them, how many minutes a night should you be practicing your iReady? Let's make sure that we attend to our iReady pathways and make sure that we make time for that at home as well as in school. And it is a partnership. So I want to also remind our community that we recognize that there is, our schools are making steady progress and growth, but there's also room for improvement. And I just want to be clear, we cannot do this work alone. I know that I speak for all of our teachers, our staff members in saying we will do this work in partnership with our parents, our community members, our partners that support us with after-school programming, interventions, and supports. We are counting on everyone in our Columbus community to show up for our students and support the efforts needed to make the necessary improvements. And again, that work starts with us.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. And actually, you hit on the second question that I have for the partnership piece. You know, as a person that works for a human service agency, a lot of times we do not have access to the portal, or the student doesn't give us access. And a lot of community members will ask, how can I help that individual? That information where you talk about the things that the student can do to help themselves gain or get better in certain subjects. Is that something that can be emailed to the parents that are maybe not proficient in using the portal? And then the second piece would be, is that if it was to be emailed or if it's available in other means other than just the portal, is that available in other languages?
So the information about iReady, how our students are performing, again, we want to remind everyone that this is the indicator, so we do not have to wait until the report card to know how our students are performing in reading and math. We have real-time data that shows us how our students are progressing and towards meeting those goals. All of our families certainly will have conversations with their teachers or upcoming open house nights, which are still happening across the district, as well as parent-teacher conferences. And those reports can certainly be printed and shared with families, but certainly this is an interactive conversation. We want to talk about the data. We want to talk about the strategies, talk about the needs of our students, and make sure that we're having conversations about it. This is not technical work. This is very adaptive work, and we need to work together to make it happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Thank you, board members, for your questions. We are now going to transition into our next presentation, which is called the Statement of Facts and Talking Points. All of the decisions and planning that we are making are anchored in our board goals and guardrails set by the Board of Education, emphasizing priorities such as literacy, matriculation rates, and whole child supports. These priorities align seamlessly with the district's overarching vision and our portrait of a graduate, which is our North Star. In this presentation tonight, we will talk about where we are right now, but know that the decisions that we make today will take us where we want to be tomorrow. And I'm going to, Dr. Brown, do you have the clicker? You bring it to us. Now, let's dive into some of the priorities for the new school year. Certainly, you are familiar with these board goals because we've just discussed many of them, but our 3 board goals for this year is strengthening reading proficiency, closing opportunity gaps, and developing portrait-ready graduates, which this is the 3rd goal, which will be transitioning to a guardrail, and we'll be standing up a math goal very soon. Our board guardrails. Our guardrails are based on the community's values and aligned with the district's educational vision and goals. These are supporting intervention systems, aligning resources equitably, prioritizing a whole child focus, and ensuring a culturally responsive staff. Our portrait of a graduate is our North Star, reflecting our community's aspirations for CCS students. Our 6 attributes: adaptability, communication, creativity, critical thinking, global empathy, and technology. When I think about these 6 attributes, I think of how our students continue to actively use their voices to participate in their communities, make decisions, and strive to achieve their goals. Our students are developing a set of competencies that will last a lifetime. General fund facts. This presentation is divided into several parts. First, we'll talk about our general fund and our permanent improvement fund. Then we'll transition to ESSER funding, ballot issue 11, and the impact if the levy passes or fails, and future considerations. First, we'd like to talk about how schools are funded. This funding model is not unique to Columbus City Schools. This is a process used across the state. This is a funding model for school districts that represents our state, federal, and other funding revenue sources and how they're distributed. You can see that the majority of our revenue is provided by local property taxes, which supports our general operating fund, which covers non-personnel and personnel. But our personnel expenses make up the majority, the bulk of our general operating expenses at 84%. Per pupil spending. The district is working with Education Resource Strategies to build an equity-based resource allocation model for our schools that is aligned with guardrail number 3. This work included an assessment of current resource allocation and comparisons with national districts of similar size and student demographics, as well as comparisons to districts in Ohio where data is available. Here are some of the main findings of that work. Columbus City Schools pre-K through 12 per pupil spending aligns with national comparison districts of similar size and student demographics. How our funds are allocated. While we prioritize instruction as a district, and it's also outlined in our board goals and guardrails, CCS spends a slightly lower proportion of total dollars on instruction at 49% than national comparison districts at 51%. And we're going to talk about why that's the case. Our operations and maintenance at 21% and pupil services and enrichment at 12% are higher than our national comparison districts. It's important to note that as a district, we spend less on school and central office leadership than comparison districts. Our expenditures on instructional support, professional growth, and business services are right in line with our peer districts. The district spends more on operations and maintenance than national comparison districts, driven by higher spending on facilities, maintenance, and transportation than districts of similar size nationally, as well as our large urban districts here in Ohio. As with national comparison districts, state data comparisons show that CCS is spending a higher percentage of the total operating budget on student transportation at 6.3%. This is due to a number of factors, including but not limited to providing transportation for CCS and charter and non-public students. We provide beyond the state minimum services than other districts for transportation, and we have more charter schools within our district boundary. Our geographic footprint is larger than most of the districts, and we also have a robust school lottery system that provides more opportunities for students to enroll in schools outside of their neighborhood school, and we provide the transportation for those students in most cases. The district has higher projected spending on pupil services and enrichment than national and state comparison districts, driven by physical health and services, social and emotional supports, and career and academic counseling at 12%. These supports include key positions such as nurses, counselors, and social workers, which we believe are mission critical for supporting our families and students. CCS spends more on facilities and maintenance per school than national comparison districts, which could be related to the age of our buildings. Over half of our buildings are over 50 years old or considered legacy buildings and have not been through a major renovation. Since 2017, we have used various one-time funding sources to prop up our permanent improvement budget, as indicated on this slide. These funds will go away as of 2024. As you can see, the red bars to the right indicate the need as indicated by our capital improvement team based on industry standards, coupled with the age of our buildings and the maintenance. We quickly run out of money once the one-time funding sources have all been exhausted. And now we'll transition to general fund assumptions. We anticipate a continued annual $15 million transportation penalty, which is a reduction in state funding for transportation due to charter non-public transportation non-compliance. We also assume at least an annual $20 million capital fund need, consolidation of buildings to reduce overall building costs, and an education model shift to be more inclusive and neighborhood-based. That means ensuring that we are providing the continuum of services to our students and families within their neighborhood so that they do not have to then be reassigned to schools across the district. ESSER funding ending September 2024. It is important to note that as a district, we have invested in several areas to provide positions on leveraging our resources of ESSER. ESSER positions currently filled by employees, we have 647 staff members who are on positions that are being funded by ESSER. And this slide shows the number of positions by category. It is important to note that as a district, we spend less on school and central office leadership than comparison districts, and this slide shows, again, that we have fewer admin positions than we do for certificated and classified. We want to make sure that we prioritize supports to our schools and to our students. ESSER provided us with just-in-time resources that we could use to support our students as we returned to school during the pandemic and to address academic recovery post-pandemic. Like the positions discussed above, these resources also have served students, staff, and families. As an example of a key resource for staff includes professional development, focus on letters, and the science of reading. Resources provided to our families have included at-home books and other resources to supplement instruction at school. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Crystal Davies, who was here earlier today, one of our family ambassadors, speaking about the important work that our family ambassadors lead in our schools and in our communities each and every day. Cost reduction efforts. We have been preparing for the ending of ESSER funding in 2024. These cost reduction efforts have been made to address the loss of ESSER funding in FY25 and balance the 5-year forecast. Adjustments will include program model changes, staff reductions, and a focus on sustainability. Summer programs and enrichment experiences will be significantly scaled back. One-to-one devices has been a totally ESSER-funded academic strategy that will cost at least $15 million per year for replacement devices and technology support for our schools. Again, this will be a significant change to our program model. The instructional coaching model is also funded by ESSER. We will not have the funding to support it at the same scale district-wide. Our online academy program will transition to a 7 through 12 model based on decreased enrollment and funding, particularly for the elementary level. If the ballot initiative is successful, the general fund operating budget will increase by $38.6 million annually. We will recapture the $20 million general fund transfer allocated to the permanent improvement fund. Our operating budget as it relates to staffing. Remember earlier I shared that on the operating side of the budget, 84% of our budget is supported by staffing, 84% of the budget. If the levy is successful, these are the positions, most of which are on ESSER currently, we will maintain. The increase in revenue would allow us to continue providing student and family support that is integral to accelerating student learning. These are estimated costs for positions that will be maintained or added to the general fund. And I'll also note that expanding pre-K and expanding our early childhood offerings, there is a possibility for some co-funding with our community partners based on an estimate that's provided here, $1.2 million to add 6 pre-K sites across the district. Again, these supports are mission critical for us to continue to focus on our board goals and guardrails as we have discussed earlier tonight. I'd also like to note that these positions transitioning to general fund, only 6 of them are administrator positions, and those are the 6 regional family engagement coordinators from ESSER. Our operating budget non-personnel, if the levy passes, we will continue the following programs at an estimated $19 million yearly to continue student and family supports and $2.5 million for additional curriculum materials, especially those that will address our needs in math, which we discussed those needs earlier this evening. I also want to mention that more than 18% of our students are English language learners. Our bilingual liaisons are critical resources for our English language learner families to ensure that they have the support as well as access that they need to participate in their child's education. Permanent improvement non-personnel. This slide addresses the allocation of funds for permanent improvement non-personnel purposes. The permanent improvement budget is essential for maintaining and improving our school facilities and infrastructure. Here are the key areas where these funds will be allocated. Infrastructure. These funds will be used to address critical infrastructure needs, including roof repairs, HVAC upgrades, electrical work, plumbing improvements, life safety and code compliance measures, and maintaining pavements and enhancing security. To date, we have upgraded HVAC in all academic classrooms, and we are in the process of finalizing Mifflin Middle School, which will be completed by the summer of 2024. Learning environments. These funds will be used to create conducive learning environments for our students. This includes classroom renovations similar to Hamilton STEM Academy, auditorium upgrades, gymnasium renovations, purchasing furnishings, enhancing playgrounds, and improving furnishings and flooring. Upgrading classroom systems and infrastructure, similar to upgrades made to Westmore Middle School, Columbus Gifted Academy, Johnson Park Middle School, and Fort Hays Arts and Academic High School. Those improvements were all made recently over the summer. Athletics and site work, these funds will be dedicated to improve athletic facilities such as stadiums, tracks, baseball and softball fields, and site infrastructure. This will ensure that our students have access to upgraded quality athletic amenities across the district. This slide highlights the critical role of permanent improvement funding in maintaining our school buildings and ensuring that our students have safe and conducive learning environments. It emphasizes our commitment to providing quality facilities that support the educational needs of our students. If the ballot initiative fails, all ESSER positions will be reduced, and other cuts and program reductions will follow. Additional impact, we will keep the $20 million capital budget transfer, but that means that we will return to the run-to-fail model. We will not be able to make the necessary investments and life cycle replacement and maintain the investments that we have made to date. There will be no pre-K expansion. We will have greatly diminished programming in the following areas: restorative practices training, summer programming for elementary schools, career advising, family ambassador and bilingual family engagement program, high-need teacher licensure incentives, and high school pathways for redesign. Potential future considerations. We will also make sure that we are making the necessary time, opportunity, and space to consider how we will identify more resources so that they are not allocated to operations over instruction. We have the following potential future items to consider. Consider accelerating school consolidation. Consider changes to school lottery and open enrollment policies and procedures. Consider changes to our current transportation policies and procedures related to alignment to the state minimum transportation requirements. Consider reductions to central office staffing. Additionally, we have identified $12.8 million in investments that, regardless of whether the levy passes or fails, we still need and can't go unfunded. Thank you. At this time, we will certainly be prepared to answer any questions that you may have.
Board members, I'd like to remind you that during this portion of questioning, we are not able to advocate. We must also stay factual, as the superintendent has done during the presentation. Mr. Cole.
Thank you, Madam President. Just as a point of clarification, and thank you so much for the presentation. As a point of clarification, can you just very easily unpack run to failure? I think that folks could misconstrue that statement. I'm very clear on what it means, but if you can explain that for our viewing audience, that'd be helpful.
Absolutely. So when we do not have the necessary resources to allocate for our permanent improvement, our capital improvement needs, maintaining our facilities, our infrastructure, and HVAC, it prevents us from having the opportunity to maintain our systems, maintain our air conditioning units. And those systems, for example, they may have a life cycle of 10 or 15 years, but if we don't have the resources to replace them when they expire, then we're essentially running these systems well past their expiration date. And so as homeowners, you know that you have to maintain your property, you have to maintain, as you have a car, you have to maintain your car. When your check engine light comes on, if you don't respond to that light when it comes on, there will be additional consequences. It may cost you more. It may be more expensive when you actually go to respond to that signal or that red flag that your car gives you. And so as a district, we want to make sure that we have the necessary resources in place to ensure that we are maintaining all of the investments that we have. That includes our roofing, that includes HVAC, that includes our boiler systems, all of those facility needs that are critical to making sure that our buildings stay warm and warm in the winter, cool in the summer, and dry throughout the year.
Thank you.
Board Member Beckerly.
Dr. Chapman, could you explain what the school consolidation process looks like with the levy passing versus the levy failing?
So what I mentioned earlier is that these are decisions that we know we have to make. As a district, to become more fiscally responsible, we know that we have to consider what it looks like to realign our learning communities based on enrollment, based on the needs of the district. The first step in that process, I believe according to our board policy, is for the board to establish a committee that includes stakeholders that would come together and talk through that process. And so this is work that would not be done to our community. This is work where we would bring, again, following our policies, but we would bring our community together and have conversations about what that looks like. And so we talked about if we are not able to increase our revenue, there are additional considerations. That was, I believe, the last slide, that we certainly need to accelerate those conversations. And so those conversations have not begun yet, but those are conversations that we will certainly have to prioritize sooner rather than later. If we are not able to increase our funding and revenue, we will certainly have to decrease our expenses, and one of the ways that we do that is considering consolidation.
And then I'd just like to revisit, sort of as a level setting, when the ESSER money became available. As a board, we talked about that this was an opportunity to figure out what it really would take to provide the supports and services and the additional instruction, the professional development, all of these things to successfully educate our students, to improve our outcomes. We were very intentional about understanding that we were going to figure that out because this was an opportunity to do that. And then analyze what worked, what didn't work, what we wanted to continue with, and that we understood at the time that it was our obligation to continue funding the things that worked, but that it was an opportunity to really get to that place where we were where we needed to be to improve our outcomes, turn the ship around. So we're there now. And so I just wanted to remind everybody that this is a real need. And I just wanted to keep that in mind as we thought about the role of ESSER funds and what they're doing, because, you know, a lot of times it helps to remember where we started. And so the other question that I had was, actually, you know what? I'll pass for now. If I can come back if I get to it. I lost my notes here.
Can you clarify on the ESSER staffing positions? We have, in the slide, it has a total of 647 positions. Can you clarify what the number of positions that are impacted if the levy passes versus fails?
Okay. Hang on one second, President Adair. We're going to pull up the slide so that we can make reference to it. Let's go to the This is the slide that shows of the ESSER positions that we listed. On the previous slide, there were 647 positions that were funded on ESSER. These are all the positions that will be transferred or billed to the general fund. If the levy is successful, these are the positions that we would maintain. These are the positions that we have identified that are mission critical to ensuring that we continue to provide the necessary supports for our students and for our families.
And to be clear, does that number equal 647?
No. That number equals 312. So not all of the positions or the programs that were funded on ESSER will we be able to sustain, even if the levy is successful.
On slide 20, the cost reduction effort slide, there is a bullet that says freeze hiring for non-essential positions through the end of 2023. Can you speak more about that?
Yes, so we're going to try to flip to that slide. If it's just
on 20, slide 20.
21. No.
Cost reduction effort. Okay, so this slide, these are our efforts to reduce costs. Again, before we even, right now, Some of these decisions have already been implemented and executed, but when we refer to freeze hiring for non-essential positions, we are essentially saying that we are going to prioritize positions that are school-facing. So all of our classroom positions, we'll continue to hire for those classroom positions, and all essential positions that are needed to support the work in our schools and our classrooms to continue that intentional focus on teaching and learning.
What type of positions are not essential?
So we would look at any positions that are more administrative in function, that are not school-facing or not have a direct impact on the classroom. So for example, if we look at a position, let's say in transportation, that is mission critical to making sure that our students get to school on time every day, that would be considered a position that we would absolutely continue to move forward with in the hiring process. But if it's a position that's far removed from that line of sight between schools and the classroom, that position will be placed on hold.
Vice President Vera.
Thank you, President Adair. So in terms, Dr. Chapman, in terms of the reduction efforts, what is the anticipated timeline if the levy were not to pass? When could we expect these changes to go into effect?
Next school year for the, this is 23-24, so that would be the following school year.
Dr. Pierce.
So I have a couple of questions. Of the positions that we seek to maintain if the levy passes, do we have a rough estimate of how many of those individuals live within our boundaries, Columbus?
No, not at this time.
When you come to the potential future considerations on page 30, are those potential future considerations there to get us to that identified funding need of $12 million?
Absolutely.
So there's some programs that are missing on this list when we talk about protecting student and family supports. For example, the Family Ambassador and Bilingual Ambassador program is not listed there. Will we give additional consideration to what should be included on those lists? Not to say that the list right now is not good, but I would like to see if we could put the ambassador's program back there.
We can certainly give additional consideration to adding programs to the list, but we will also need to give equal consideration to removing programs to the list.
That's fair.
Our technology program, again, I mentioned before that before the pandemic, we did not have a budget at the district level on general fund to support our one-to-one technology program. It did not exist. We stood that program up during the pandemic using ESSER investments to the tune of $15 million. We are significantly going to scale that back by cutting that allocation in half. And because of our funding constraints, and that will be, we're thinking more along the lines of implementing that program with $9 million. And it will be very, very different. It will look different. It will feel different. Perhaps every student will not have a device that they can take home every day. Perhaps you'd have to move into thinking about our policy when a device is broken. But there will be significant needs and program model shifts in order for us to continue to maintain the supports that's needed.
My last question then relates to our summer programs for elementary schools. When we think about the growth that we need to see in that literacy and math component, not just on our iReady assessments, but also on our state report card, which we just reviewed, are our summer programs for elementary schools helping us to see gains in those areas?
Absolutely. Our summer program continues to help us with making sure that we do not have that summer slide where when students are not in school, they regress and do not make the necessary progress. We see that when they come back in the fall, They are not making, they're actually regressing, and they're not showing the gains that when they left school in the spring. And so our summer programs provide us with an opportunity to keep our students engaged over the summer and focus on academics and focus on learning. And so again, we will have to make significant changes to the way we provide summer programming. The last couple of years, with significant ESSER investments, we have been able to redesign the summer program and made it into a summer experience with lots of enrichment opportunities as well as intervention resources. And that will shift significantly due to a decrease in funding.
So connecting that back to the potential future considerations, even though summer programming for our elementary schools is not on that list with the Protect Student and Family Supports, we can still anticipate that we will have summer programming for elementary students, but it will be a different program than what we were used to under ESSER funding.
Absolutely, Dr. Pierce. So we are committed to providing summer programming to all of our students, and we will provide summer programming next summer. But it will look and feel differently from the programming that we have been able to provide the last couple of years using our ESSER investments.
And then just one more quick question related to our restorative practices training. We've made a commitment to external community partners. We've discussed this as being a very important component of our goals and guardrail work with AJ. When we think about how that program may be diminished, can you give us an idea of what that might look like? Are we going to keep the student component of training the trainers and keep it in schools? Will the adult component of that change a little bit? What component can we expect to change?
So we're committed to continuing with our restorative practice training, the student-led restorative practice training, as well as the training for adults. But we will have to scale back the amount of training, the number of days that we provide the training. And so while we might not be able to go as fast as we would like to with diminished resources, we will have to just modify and adjust the scale of the implementation of the program.
Okay, thank you.
Vice President Vera, did you have a question? No. Can you explain on slide 28 on additional impact under the greatly diminished programming, high school pathways for redesign?
So this is part of a strategy that's near and dear to my heart, because I strongly believe that this is work that needs to happen in our district. It needs to happen as of yesterday, right? It's long overdue. We need to realign our learning communities to ensure that we are providing career academies, really standing up career academies at all of our high schools. That would be the goal. But if we do not have an increase in funding, again, innovative strategies that will transform the student experience, we will not have the resources to make those necessary investments. And this would be a community-led transformational model where we would work with members of our community, including students, parents, staff members, community members, to help us think about what career pathways should exist at every high school, not just some of our high schools. That is an experience that every CCS student, we would want to provide them with that opportunity. And so we're going to put a pause in that and certainly know that this is an experience and an opportunity that we want to provide to all of our high school students in an alignment with all of the workforce needs in our community as well as in our region. This would provide us an opportunity to prepare all of our students for those opportunities. And for me, that's really, really important.
Dr. Chapman, our community has made a large investment in the Columbus Promise. Is there any impact if the levy fails to us meeting our commitment to create portrait of a graduate students who are Promise ready? Is there any impact to the students who may want to take advantage of the Columbus Promise?
President Adair, I would say that the impact would be, there's no promise without our portrait. And so our students, they have to matriculate through our program K through 12 in order to graduate to become Promise-ready graduates. That's a fact, right? You can't apply to be a Columbus Promise student without having graduated. And so all of the work that we have discussed tonight, what we need to do to prepare our students to access grade level curriculum, to achieve on their standards, to achieve on their assessments, all of that work is integral to us ensuring that we are ensuring that our students are on track to be portrait ready and in turn being Promise ready.
I don't see any additional questions. Thank you, Dr. Chapman.
Thank you, President Adair, members of the board.
All right, that concludes your report for this evening?
Yes.
Yes. All right, we're going to move over to our Internal Auditor's Office. We have Internal Auditor O'Connor here. Good evening.
Good evening, President Adair. We don't have a report today. Just wanted to let you know we did have a good meeting on September 7th with the Audit and Accountability Committee.
Thank you. Chair Beckerly.
Yeah, I just want to echo that it really was a terrific meeting on a lot of fronts, and that sentiment was also echoed by our community members who really were very impressed with Kevin and his approach to our Office of Internal Audit. So thank you.
Yeah. And we will go over to the Treasurer's Office. Treasurer Vanover.
Similarly, I don't have a formal report, but I did want to just make a report. 4 members of our team, our leadership team, last week went to an Allaview Education Finance Summit. Was really great information. Allaview is a partner that we are working with to provide a more user-friendly dashboard for our staff to help them better understand and manage their budgets. But this particular training was also focused on how to communicate financial data and numbers in a way that makes sense to non-numbers people. So the first speaker was excellent. It was an author of a book called Making Numbers Count, and she walked through a lot of different ways to take the data that we all use day to day in the Treasurer's Office and in a financial aspect and put it into terms that make sense to a community or to a staff member or somebody that just is not as familiar and as comfortable with those things. So just to give you a heads up, while we were working through that, and they'd break us into small groups and suggest that we come up with ideas, instead of us just coming up with ideas, our team sat and actually took our data and made some of those slides, and I'll be sharing those with the board just to provide some of that information so that you guys can look at it, and any of that you think is helpful, relevant, we look for some feedback and look forward to being able to utilize those skills to help better communicate our financial information to the community and the staff. So,
thank you. Chair Cole, do you have any comments?
Just very briefly, thank you again. I'm good.
They're trying to put it up.
No, no, they can hear me. Thank you so much for the presentation, team. And in addition to that, thank you, Madam Treasurer, for your contribution.
Thank you. Board members, we're going to go into board matters. We have a resolution to adopt the statement of facts and talking points about the November 7th, 2023 tax levy that was just presented by Dr. Chapman, as well as memorializing our discussion to establish the facts for our community. I will read the resolution. Whereas the Board of Education of the Columbus City School District, the school district, has declared the necessity of levying an additional tax in excess of the 10 mil limitation for the benefit of this school district pursuant to the provisions of section 5705.217 of the Ohio Revised Code. Whereas the Board of Education adopted a resolution determining to proceed to levy a tax in excess excess of the 10 mil limitation. Whereas the Board of Education believes it is important for the public and press to have information about why the levy is being placed on the November ballot and the implications of the school district of the levy passing or failing. Now, therefore, it be resolved by the Board of Education of the Columbus City School District that the board hereby adopts the attached statement of facts and talking points that include information about why the levy is being placed on the November ballot and the implications for the school district on the levy passing or failing. That was the presentation that we just saw. District personnel, when talking about the levy, are directed to use the attached statement of facts and talking points as a guide so that they are consistently communicating factual information to the public and press about the levy. In addition to the attached statement of facts and talking points, district personnel may share other information with the public and press as long as such information is factual. That is the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
President Adair?
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Vera?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, item 8, notice of public hearing on the reemployment of retired employee. 8.1, notice of public hearing on reemployment of retired employee Donald Poff. Pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 3309.345, the Columbus Board of Education gives notice that Donald Poff, who retired from the Columbus City Schools effective June 3, 2023, is seeking employment with Columbus City Schools as a teacher effective November 12, 2023. The board will hold a public hearing on November 8, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the boardroom at 3700 South High, Columbus, Ohio, on the issue of Mr. Poff's reemployment. We will now move into our consent agenda. Our consent agenda consists of items 10.1 to 26.8. No. 10.1 to 25.7. Is there a motion? I'm sorry, are there any items?
25.6.
25.
25.6.
I'm sorry.
No, if you look
Let me look
online,
at what's online.
It goes to 25.6.
Yeah, and
right.
it goes
That's
to,
right.
is it 25.6 or something got taken out? Okay, 5.6.
Yeah. You got it.
All right, now we know what we're voting on, yes? Okay. Are there any items a member would like to remove for separate consideration? No. Seeing none, is there a motion to approve? I think it was Pierce, motion, Brown seconded. Okay. Any items a member would like to discuss? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Cole?
Yes, with an exception. For section 19.1, in the Human Resources PDF, the second Human Resources PDF on page 5, it is the last administrative assignment. I am a no.
So you have to just do the whole thing. You can't subdivide.
I can't.
No.
Say yes.
Yep, that's what I had to do. We had to do.
I will abstain. I don't have enough information.
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. The last thing on our agenda is executive session. Vice President Vera, you have the motion.
I move that the Board of Education recess into executive session per section 121.22 G1 Ohio Revised Code to consider the appointment, employment, or compensation of public employees, and per section 121.22 G3 Ohio Revised Code to confer with an attorney for the public
body concerning disputes involving the public body that are subject of pending or imminent court action, and per section 121.22G4, to prepare for, conduct, or review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
Just to clarify, it's only point 1. It's the first one that you read, just to be clear. I know.
Oh, okay, well, this is what I was getting.
I know.
Second.
It's been there's a second. Please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
No. I have to go back to 19.
Oh, wait, so you want to, I'm sorry, you need to go back to amend a vote?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, can we, I don't know how. A parliamentarian?
We have to retract our.
Currently, you need to resolve the item on the table, which is the recess into executive session.
But then we're recessed.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're recessed.
Can we just withdraw the motion?
Yes.
Yes, you could withdraw your
Only
motion.
withdraws
So-
of the
so-
executive
So well, if you're all in agreement with withdrawing the motion and stopping the voting, you'll be fine.
Yes.
You all agree with withdrawing the motion and stopping the voting?
Yes.
We're in
Okay.
agreement.
So now you need to somebody needs to move to reconsider
Consent agenda.
the consent agenda.
Move to reconsider.
Move to reconsider the consent agenda.
Motion and a second.
All right.
Call the roll.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
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 I noticed that. I can't vote yes on that.
Yes.
Okay, so we need another motion to approve the consent agenda again?
Yes.
You'll need to now, so now you'll need to move to adopt the consent agenda. You'll need a second,
Okay, motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
and any discussion that you would have.
Okay.
No.
Any discussion? You want to discuss 19.1?
So, we have I need to abstain because there are some individuals that may be employed currently through the Ohio State University that are also going to be employed through and with us. So I need to abstain from 19.1 and 19.2.
It's just 19.
There's no 19.
But there's two.
There's the first
PDFs.
PDF and the second one, so I need to abstain.
Okay.
I mean, I can give you the particular names that.
It's okay. No.
Just abstaining from 19.1 is
Okay.
sufficient. You're good to go. So you would once again call the roll.
Okay, call the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, with abstention to 19.1.
Yes, with abstention to 19.1.
Yes.
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 You're now back on track.
Okay, all right. Now we are going to go into executive session. Vice President Vera, you now have an updated motion.
I move that Board of Education recess into executive session per section 121.22G1 Ohio Revised Code to consider the appointment, employment, or compensation of public employees.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Yes.
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 Thank you. So that will adjourn this portion of the meeting. We will come back to close our meeting officially out, but that will not be televised. So thank you to everyone who is watching. Thank you to staff. Thank you to Centennial High School.
They have to turn off.
We are in recess.
They.